Rick Hale, how are you, sir?
Brett,
Mojo Monday, right?
welcome to Mojo Monday. How are you today?
I am doing good. We are starting a new series, and I'm excited about it. We picked up this book called The Algebra of Happiness by Scott Galloway, and the interesting part is it creates. It's called The Notes on the Pursuit of Success, Love, and Meaning. And it makes inference that there's a formula to happiness. What do you think about that?
I mean, there's definitely clues and cues for happiness. Part of the job, yes, there are proven strategies. There's proven an approach, and there is a formula for devising happiness in your world. But it's also an inside job and relative. It's how you see the universe, the world, and what you want from a life well lived.
Yeah. So it's interesting. We should talk a little bit real quick about the author. Scott Galloway is one of the top business professors really in the country. He's out of NYU. He did all his studies in California and ended up at New York University. And he wrote a book before this one called The Four, which was really like a really insightful study of Amazon, Google, Apple, and Microsoft, right? And what they mean to the business world. Yet this one's really more of a personal book. And I think his insights are really insightful for a couple reasons. But one is he spends all his time with college students, Rick. And, that early age where life is still in front of you, yet they study all the highly successful entrepreneurs of the world. And I guess this book, in a way, is kind of trying to write a roadmap between those 2 points in life. Like, I'm the college student, I'm the highly successful entrepreneur. And what I'm really excited to dive into this with you around is you're almost a little bit of a beta study or a petri dish over there in your life. You've got 4 young adults that are, I guess out of college age this at this point, but they're on that roadmap, right? What do you think?
They sure are. And the interesting thing, before we even go to that, is that he taught a class that's hyper popular at NYU called basically a brand strategy course. Yeah. And how do you, build a brand, promote a brand, create eyeballs and interest, sell a lot of product, and then potentially sell. And he had lots of financial success building, 7, 8 companies as well. So he's got a lot of side hustle going. So he's credible. And he said in his class, the inevitable conversation evolves from, the tactical strategies around money and strategy and consumer behavior, but it ultimately lands on, what career should I choose? How can I set myself up for success? How do I reconcile ambition with personal growth and personal goals? What can I do now that I don't have regrets in 30, 40, 50, or 80 years? And I thought, man, what a cool setup. And the algebra of happiness, in his words, are to examine success, love, and the definition of a life well lived. And so what a great topic. And it's a pretty easy read. So hopefully everyone listening, go out and buy the book. He is free with his words and prone to put
words in here.
He curses a few times here and there, but you can feel his authentic energy and his sincerity. And to your point, he didn't grow up lucky. He didn't wake up wealthy, day one.
He wasn't born on third base.
He had to grind. And I mean, I like that he also points out that there are a lot of wealthy, successful people running around boasting, pounding on their chest, telling everybody, live your passion, just go be free to follow your dreams. And he's like, that sounds cool. He goes, what they forget to tell you is that their success was a grind. It didn't just happen. And that it might be 60, 80-hour weeks for a decade. And that somewhere in the middle of that life experience, you figure out who and what you are. And then you pursue passion and joy and the ancillary things that go with having a successful foundation.
Yeah, I heard something actually a little bit more inside that conversation, Rick, which is you actually find your passion inside the grind instead of trying to follow a passion. And what he means by that is when you start to take that journey of mastery, or however you want to call it, the grind, inside of that, you start to get really good at things. And when you get really good at things, you actually become passionate about it because you're good at it. But you would cheat yourself with that experience if you didn't spend time in the grind first. Now, we should probably talk about, the grind is a little counter intuitive to living a balanced life sometimes.
There is.
And I'm curious your thoughts around that.
Well, Gary Keller, our mentor and leader, faithful leader, makes it real clear that counterbalance is more important than balance, and that balance is honestly it's an impossibility. There's no way to have perfect balance. You can certainly stage a strategic day with all the major important elements included in your day, but that doesn't mean you're going to have perfect balance, and that it's okay to be out of balance seasonally as long as you come back to some version of counterbalance, so that the relationships and the other aspects of life are honored, and that you don't throw those out the window on the way to a singular win, whether it's a business or financial or personal pursuit of a goal.
Yeah. Here's one of those choice words. He called it struggle porn. He said, we live our lives trying to find the places where we struggle, and we think that that's supposed to happen, or opposite of that, we find ourselves in struggle and we see everybody else's highlight reel on social media thinking it all came to them easy. And we kind of have this weird relationship with the grind or struggle or whatever you want to call it, right?
Well, I talked about this yesterday in that session we had with our top 10%, and that, there's two types of stress. There's good and bad stress. There's healthy stress, which is the struggle, but not in the sense that, when I say struggle, that's the committed, nose to the grindstone, die on the sword, burn the boats. And there's no flaw in having that level of commitment. And people often fall prey to focusing on the wrong types of stress and the types of stress that debilitate. And one of the formulas that came out from Jordan Fried said this: performance equals potential, which I believe is your purpose and gifts, minus interference.
Yep.
And so the interference is the distraction that keeps you from staying focused long enough to really level up and achieve. And so one of the things I would challenge people listening today is, what in your life is playing a role as an interference method, thing? What's in your life that's interfering or distracting you from the big rocks that matter? Because I'd also believe there's enough time in the day to eliminate a few things that fit that category, to replace those with the counterbalance that's required to have a holistic success story.
Absolutely. And, he talks about time value of money. And the way we choose to spend our time is very directly related to the success we'll receive in life. And he uses an analogy around ESPN, which I loved, because he basically said, and I'll paraphrase, if you tell me how much time somebody spends watching ESPN versus how much time people spend playing sports and then catching highlights later, I can predict the success they'll have later in life. And the reality of that kind of struck me a weird, because one, I do like a little ESPN, but we joke and talk about how we only just want the highlights. We don't want to watch the whole show, right? But the truth is are you in the game or in the arena, as the quote talks about, or are you watching it as a spectator?
Well, and if you're spectating, that's one example of distraction and interference, and where you could substitute that for a leveled up either self-development or maybe a moment in a relationship with hyper focus. Be where your feet are is one of my favorite sayings, like free of distraction and be present. That's the greatest gift you can give another human that you appreciate and love. And so by virtue of chasing the articles that someone else feeds you, are you writing the book, or is someone else subscribing your life? And by getting sucked into these, Netflix and other distractions and interferences, it could also, by the way, be people in your world that are leaners that are stealing your thunder and, are like energy vampires. That's another version. So how do you rid yourself of that distraction to stay focused on the prize and become more efficient in your approach to winning?
Yeah. So, it's this balance in life that we constantly are on the seesaw, right? Trying to figure out how to keep life in balance, whether it's on the personal side versus the professional side versus time versus money. But at the end of the day, time becomes one of the most important factors that if we can ever figure out how to manage that time and stay focused on the things that matter the most, we live the most fruitful life. I wouldn't say it's always the most balanced life, but it certainly is the most fruitful life.
Yep. And you brought up something earlier about having, I have 4 boys that are 22, 23 to 27
I
right
wasn't going to
now.
let you get away from that. I was
They're,
coming back.
yeah, I knew you would, but they're cutting their teeth in their own vocations. And the interesting thing as a third party witness is, and as a hopeful role model, is that I never made the grind look sexy. Like the grind is the grind. You got to do what you do. But what I did a good job of is showing the value of relational build and how inside of, I've obviously spent my time in the real estate industry, and coaching, teaching, and nurturing and consulting is like what I do. And to be honest, sometimes it's a grind because other people expect and want things from you when you're maybe less available or prefer to do other things. But at the end of the day, that commitment, I think, shone through, as well as a willingness to do the work, carry the bag, knock doors, do whatever it took. And at some point, you earn the right to buy back time, and you earn the right, the passive investments fund and fuel a better version of that story. And they're seeing as adults now versus kids, everything is either a compromise or a conflict in their minds, because they're a here and now mindset. That's how kids are. And so I taught them the value of patience and waiting for, delayed gratification, but also that the gratification can be really awesome when you earn the right to have huge experiences and go to cool places and do cool things. And so I think there was a lot of soft skills taught along the way. But at this point, my feedback to them in their 20s is you either earn or you learn. And both are, vital. You've got to earn enough money to pay your bills, but you don't have kids yet. You have the capacity to have more experiences free of, the tie down that comes with, commitments in the form of family. But also, there's no greater season in life than now to learn who you are, what you are, and why you are. And by the way, it's never too late to work on those 3 things.
I love this, Rick. I think one of the tragedies that I observe in a lot of people is they try to build their life around the life plan of winning the lottery. Like, oh, I'm going to cheat the system, or I'm going to shortcut the path, or I'm going to have this brilliant idea that goes viral. Yet, okay, maybe there are a couple outliers that happens to, but the reality is that's not what the great life plans look like. The great life plan always starts with a grind, and then you earn your way out of the grind. And and earns not necessarily monetarily, it's earning in knowledge and intelligence and skill sets. And early in life, you get paid for what you do, where later in life, you get paid for how you think, right? And the reality is to build a great life plan or a formula for happiness, it's got to start with a grind.
It does start with the grind, but I'll share this. There's some people that are addicted to the grind, which goes back to the porn story you told earlier.
Yeah.
And so be careful being addicted to a grind, because there's elements of reward in that you feel like you're accomplishing something at the risk and at the default of losing something else. So begin with the end in mind. That's my best advice in chapter 1 is think about the time value of money. What does it take, active and passive income, to live the life of your design and your choice? And then recognize the time value of experiences. My dad told a story recently where if he'd had it to re-script, and he was a successful doctor in New York, and he said, if I had it to do over, I think I would have spent all my money in my 20s and had all the experiences that my physical capacity could manage, and then earn it back when I was mature and capable, because now that I'm at the age I'm at, it becomes harder. And so it kind of bodes to the counterbalance story and how you can't have it all. You can't have all the key, massive over the top experiences without grinding enough to earn the right to, unless you were born with a silver spoon. And so, but recognizing where you want to land so that you can dial back the grind and start to experience that before it's too late makes tremendous sense to me. And it goes back to creating and crafting a formula for what happiness is on the front end.
Apparently this is the formula. We'll get there.
Yeah, you got a heart, you got money, and you got muscle, which I'm sure relates to health and well-being.
There you go. Rick, I'm excited to dive into this with you. It's a new series for us. And I think it's probably one of the things that I think is very timely, because as we're recording this, Mojo, the country's in a little bit of a recession, right? And sometimes happiness goes out the window in a recession, and it absolutely shouldn't. So here's to happiness, sir.
Yes, and defining your algebra for it.
There you go. Even better. Yeah. Rick, Mojo Monday, my friend.
Mojo Monday, everybody.